everybody, it's Ben. Welcome aboard the Bonny Rackham for another episode. We are on to Season 3, Episode 6 now. Let's get straight into this one.
Get us underway.
Okay, so let's start with the title, as always. So yeah, I'm going to call this one Duel. A nice, self-explanatory one. The actual duel, you know, with Flint and Teach. Jack begins his duel of wits with Woods-Rogers. Silver continues his sort of duel with himself and being perceived as weak. It really covers a lot this episode. I know we already had one last season called Duality, but this is a sort of different kind of duel, this one, and it's a very prominent theme in this episode. So yeah, let's get into a quick brief summary and a rating.
First item.
Okay, so this one is written by regular Dan Schultz, with solo credit on this one, and we've not had a solo credit writer since episode 7 of last season. It's directed by Lucas Ettelin, who we saw last in my favourite episode of the season so far, episode 2, Eye of the Storm. So yeah, the second half of the season really kicks into full force in this episode. Lines are being drawn and lines are being crossed. Silver and Madi bond over the pressure of being second in command. Meanwhile on Nassau, the pressure of getting hold of that remaining gold is getting to Woods-Rogers. But as luck would have it, Jack strolls right back into town and a fantastic duel there begins. And Max, you know, she's realising she's going to have to pick a side now. Speaking of picking a side, Flint and Billy make it to Teach's Island. Billy is unsettled and their duelling of differences is arising again. Both captains sit down to try and make a compromise, but their duelling of minds comes to a stalemate, so there's only one option left, an actual duel, leaving Vane with a big choice to make and a final decision that changes everything to come. It's another outstanding episode, so many big scenes in this one. We're back up into the 9s for me, equal to the already mentioned season fave so far, episode 2, so it's going to get a very high 9.4 this one. So yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into those character discussions. A lot to go over, as per usual, this season.
Next item.
So yeah, we'll start with Maroon Island and Silver and Madi, and then we'll go to Nassau, and then we'll finish with Okanoke Island. So yeah, let's start with Maroons and Madi and Silver. Okay, so Silver has stayed behind with Madi and the Maroons to solidify their compact. And during a ritual for Mr. Scott, who it would seem is dying quite a long, painful death, realising John is not close by, Madi leaves to check on his whereabouts. And though initially angry, she soon realises he's in some big discomfort from his wound. He's been ignoring it for a while, bigger fish to fry, and it's finally caught up with him, all the pain. And we're really going to see this episode a great bond forming with these two. So yeah, Madi wants to have Silver's wound tended to, but he's stubbornly refusing. We get a quick glimpse of that leadership power Madi has, as Silver sort of gestures her hand away a bit roughly and he has a knife at his throat immediately. But the smallest, silentest of nods from Madi sees the man leave them. When Madi asks him why he won't take any medicine, why he won't take any help, Silver explains he doesn't want to look weak in front of his men. Says he can't feel weak, he can't be weak. Obviously, we saw this back in episode 2 when he was speaking with Muldoon. John says for some time he's just been about holding everything together, but only way it endures is if he looks the part. But he can't look the part if he's screaming in agony or in an opium haze, as he sort of says. He really is just trying to grin and bear it and get on with it. Obviously, we never get any real background with Silver. We just don't know, you know, he's our narrator on anything we learn, so we just can't take it for fact. But this sort of reaction just feels really kind of trauma loaded for me. This attitude to receiving help, to not wanting it, you know, to looking weak in front of other men, in front of anyone. I think John probably went through some shit as a young boy, you know, as a lad, orphan or not, which has a lot to do with this, but obviously we'll never know the full story. And Madi remarks that no one prepared him for this, did they? For leading and having people look up for him for guidance. She'd be right, it's just sort of naturally happened, hasn't it, with John? We're seeing here they're both quite similar, two respected leaders who aren't the actual top of command as yet, but the ones that everyone looks up to, the ones who have their men's ear and who act as a middleman and speak in their best interests with their leaders. He ascended and took that role without really trying or being prepared, whereas she's always known that she'll lead one day. We saw her library a couple of episodes ago, so she's literate, she's well read, and we'll get a glimpse of what she's been reading in a moment. We've seen she keeps her pulse on what's going on around her. She's clearly been prepared by her mother, and she's self-prepared herself. She knows and remarks that one day she will be the one who tends, not who is tended to. Says she knows why he's angry, knows why he's frustrated and tired, even if no one else does. And then she drops a banger. The crown is always a burden. Another great tagline for the show. Anyone who's led on this show has seen that already. Madi continues, but it cannot be borne if you cannot stand. The similarities between the pep talk he gave Flint last episode and her kind of doing the same to him here, are really strong. So after their chat, Silver has relented a little and accepted some sort of herbal mixture to put on his wound. Madi says if you won't take anything, at least take this to bite down on. She sort of gives him a wooden peg. But John, despite being seemingly well out of sight of his crew, he tells the medicine woman to just do it. He won't take it. And it's clearly very painful for him, and we see Madi looking on, really building some respect, I think, for him, maybe something stronger already. John is really gripping onto this pillar, he's holding on to. He's gripping it, his knuckles almost turning white. And after what seems like she's debating for a moment, she gently puts her hand, through his for support. A gesture of respect, kindness, fondness to give him some strength. A bit of all the above, I think. So a bit later, she sat by his side as he's laying down, obviously getting over the pain he's just gone through. And Silver states his biggest burden has been Flint himself. His unpredictability, his madness, the depths of it are profound and dark. And Silver says in order to understand him, to be able to follow him, to be able to lead the men, he's tempered it and steered him where needed. I've descended into those depths and connected with him so that I might be able to do so. He confesses to Madi he's not the first partner of Flint's to have done this. Those that did never surfaced again, obviously Miranda Gates. Silver, he's being so honest and vulnerable with her here. Something happened in that previous conversation or in that moment she held his hand for support. And we see a small tear fall down Silver's cheek. For all his strength, and change of character we've seen since that sneaky coward from season 1, he's still just another person in over their heads with it all at the moment. And he's showing here, he's lonely, I think, with the burden of it. Maybe his duel, is against himself right now. So Madi says to take on this task, maybe it shouldn't be done alone, but with a tether. Someone to help find a way out. Silver looks to her a moment and says thoughtfully, maybe. I love these two. I love Madi. What a strong woman. While it is, of course, in her best interests to invite herself along as Silver's tether, to become part of this crew on board and keep an eye on Captain and Quartermaster, as she speaks about with Scott in a moment, there's definitely still something forming here, and there's definitely alliance of another sort of, alliance of the heart beginning, I think, as well. So a little bit later in the episode, she has a little brief scene with her father about her fears of them aligning with Flint and Silver, who she now understands don't always see eye to eye. As I say, she has a fondness for Silver, it's very clear to see, but their cause will always come first for Madi. We'll see that, as time goes on with her. Like Silver, she's also a great, well-respected leader, passionate about what she's doing. She remarks how the Maroons' fate is in both Silver and Flint's hands, and Mr. Scott, he shares some regrets of their missed time together, and how he would have shared how both the worlds, work, especially the pirate world, and given her the opportunity to interact with it. He says for them all to remain partners, they must agree who their common villain is. And we just see in Mr. Scott's voiceover while this is happening, we see Madi reading from a book from her library, Voyage Around the World by Woods-Rogers. It's a small scene, between them both, just confirming the best solution to keep an eye on all the goings on is for Madi just to be at the heart of it as well on board. and despite what quarrels Flint and Silver may have between themselves, for them all to remember who the big bad is, is sort of what the scene is reminding us. Yeah, I'm glad to be getting into some really good Madi stuff, and for being a great moral support for Silver, she is most certainly picking up her first MVP nomination this episode. So yeah, wasn't too much to deepen with those guys this episode. So yeah, let's get into Nassau's goings on, and we have Eleanor Woods-Rogers, Jack and Max, and a little bit of Vane. Okay, so quick scene where Eleanor speaks to Mrs. Hudson. This is where we learn she declined the offer to spy for a nice payoff originally, but a heavy called Grundell was waiting at her home, with her children, basically threatening their lives if she didn't play ball. Again, there's still more of this to be revealed, but as a smaller side character, I don't want to delve, too long into Mrs. Hudson. But she seems like a good woman who's just unfortunately ended up getting caught up in something much bigger with people that just aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. Yeah, so when you add the element, she's just got no choice in the matter, with the threat of her children's lives. It's actually quite brave of her that she came forward and confessed all to Woods-Rogers at the risk of, well, either side kind of taking it out on her. He could have got angry, dismissed her and thrown her out the loop, or the, the people she's doing it for, the Spanish, they could find out and she could get into trouble that way. So the next scene with this bunch is on the beach with Eleanor and Woods-Rogers. One of his men reports the gold is stored on board and heading for Havana. So yeah, they're seeing that off. And speaking to Eleanor now, he remarks that he had some instinct about Mrs. Hudson, but he sort of disregarded it as just nosy interest in their affairs. And he sort of stops short there because they've been kind of dancing on it, haven't they? But nothing's quite happened yet with these two. And Eleanor says it's not as simple as returning the gold anymore to the Spanish. Spain will feel insulted by all the sort of shady dealings, she says. This isn't theft, it's an insult. And insults to empires require answers. Interesting line. Maybe my quote of the episode. Coming from Eleanor as well, could read into that a bit, with her and Vane's dynamic and her thinking of herself. Woods-Rogers knows he's in a bit of a bind and he's feeling the pressure. So to not insult Spain, he has to give back the full amount or he's failed. When he's going over again of how bad it could go if he fails, Spain's retaliation, what could happen, Eleanor instantly suggests fighting back. Defend the island despite the odds. We're starting to see little snippets of her old self coming back, little snippets of pirate Eleanor who wants to defend her home, who wants to fight back. She's debating a defence, she's talking about it, but he shuts that straight down. He says they won't be involved if that happens. He'd be sent back to London and her sentence will be back on. She'd be back, ready to be hung. He takes a little glance at her as he says, their best chance of Nassau surviving is him guiding it. He saw her passion for a moment there, a bit of the person he doesn't really know, and I don't think he liked it. So he's taking a moment just to get her back in check. He can't be as gruff as he was with her, in those early episodes now, because he's got some leeway with her and they have got a little thing going. But he's kind of letting her know, it's only a small little moment, a very little slip of the mask, because that's all we're getting of his true face at the moment. But add it to the little one we got last episode as well, the one that Eleanor saw. And yeah, this complex companionship just continues to keep me on my toes, wondering what's real. Are they falling for each other as quickly as it would seem? Is Eleanor not so homed in on Vane anymore at this point anyway, and struggling to play dutiful side piece partner when she'd be playing this all quite differently? But clearly showing to us, and maybe to her, he's got no real care for this island, no real passion. It's all still just business, and first sign of trouble, or more hassle than it's worth, he'd easily leave it to burn to the ground. But yeah, not much else to get into with the pair of them this episode, so can just mention them as they come up again chronologically. They need to find Jack and Anne, he states. And yeah, speaking of the legend, let's get into Jack, or should I say John Rackham. So yeah, Jack strolls back into Nassau, blissfully unaware of the danger he's about to be in, but he's far from blissful, because he sees everybody's hard at work. They're restoring the fort, and yeah, he's salty as hell. Understandable. I wouldn't say he was trying his best back at the start of the season, but But he was trying, and he was getting nowhere. Meanwhile, in the tavern, where people are still queuing up for their pardons, Adele is fixing Featherstone a cravat, or tit curtains as he calls it. He's not keen, but like most, it seems, taking a bit of a, if you can't beat them, join them kind of attitude to all this going on. As Jack is lining up, he catches up with him and may have a funny little exchange. Featherstone, understandably shocked to see him there. Jack looks at the cravat and Featherstone repeats what Adele just told him. It's what respectable gentlemen wear. And he wonders why he's here. And Jack says he thought pardons were were a good thing to have just in case. And he wanted to see the new governor up to his neck in it. But that's not what's happened. Industry is in fashion. You're dressed like a Turkish whore. All because a man arrived, stood on a beach and said, please. Featherstone can tell he's angry and yeah, Jack confirms it. He's confused how it's all come about. More work, less wages, but somehow he's got everyone on board and Jack is just confounded. But then it's his turn to sign the pardon and we learn his legal name is John Rackham. So he's not even pardoning the bloody name he goes by or wants to be remembered by. Makes this even more frustrating that he came back. It'd be interesting to know how John became Jack, because real Calico Jack is, well, Jack, but his legal name is John. So no idea, the real history there or the Black Sails law. It'd be really interesting to find out. I know a name like Elizabeth can become many names, but I'm not sure how John gets to Jack. His father's name, maybe? I know he has a decent backstory, kind of monologue in episode 8, so maybe something is revealed then that I've forgotten. But yeah, anyway, now at the front of the queue, he realises they are, of course, looking for him, and he's informed that the governor would like a word. And he's got no choice in it. He's got armed men to either side of him. So yeah, with all to come, I wonder if Jack would have left with Vane last episode or still played this game he's about to play. And so the duel begins, unknown to all at the moment except Jack. So he meets Woods-Rogers and he has him made immediately. He's like a petulant child and I love it. I just love it. I just love Jack in this scene. Yeah, Woods-Rogers, he's all charm and polite and Jack is polite, but there's some snark there, that's for sure. Rogers' book comes up in discussion pretty quickly. It's been briefly mentioned already, but it's going to come into play in learning more about Woods-Rogers in the episodes to come. Obviously, it came up in Madi's discussion as well in this episode. So Jack says he's read his book, and Rogers is seemingly happily surprised. But Jack, being Jack, says, well, most of it. I confess I may not have soldiered through to the end, but I got the gist of it. Another great Jack quote. And I love it does exactly what he intended to do, and it just gets under Woods-Rogers' skin. When he asks Jack to elaborate, Jack winds the Jack in the Box up even more. Wealthy guy, rebelling against wealthy parents, loses everything in the process. To which Jack can't help a little giggle escape. Please understand, I'm quite particular about my library, but people seem to have liked it fine and it's done wonders for you, so congratulations on all that. Jack Rackham, you are a shit, but I love you. Woods-Rogers, he must be seething. But of course, he has a big reveal about that book to make to Jack at a later date as a bit of a kind of ha. For now, he's keeping up the politeness and being civil, and he begins to explain the dilemma about the gold and that's in his and Anne's possession. So having explained it all off screen, Jack asks him, will it be like the Rosario raids all over again? Woods-Rogers confirms, pretty much. And we can see Jack's clogs kind of going, kind of working overtime, deciding what he's going to do. And this is where it's Woods-Rogers serving the game, of mental tennis that they're playing. His chance to get a few little backhanded insults in. He says how he knows, how frustrating it is to lose everything and be powerless against it. The temptation to keep something to show for it. He understands, but he assures him if he doesn't cooperate, his face will be the first Spain will see. God, Woods-Rogers is a great character. I really do despise him so much. But, at this time, he's playing such a great game. And Jack knows it. And Jack hates it. Hence, I think, why he makes his play. We just really see Jack debating his next move. He's sort of standing and, we home in on him for a second. He's got his drink. And he's just really deciding, is this what I want to do? Yeah, it's a big decision, but he was just an important part of that compact as Vane and Flint, who we'll obviously get into next. He's not just going to roll over and surrender easily either. So yeah, sincerely, he speaks about Henry Avery, a name that's come up before with Jack, you know, a man he clearly respects. Yeah, Jack wanted to build that same reputation, and he says, that's not going to happen the way I thought it was, is it? Of course, Woods-Rogers, he thinks he's rolling over in this moment and playing to his tune. But Jack's truly begun his duel and knows if he wants notoriety, he's going to have to play it a bit differently, as they'll confirm to Max in a moment. Although both men understand each other a lot more after this great scene, they still haven't given everything away to each other. Woods-Rogers has no idea at this point how smart and sort of sneaky Jack really is. But Jack also has no idea that Woods-Rogers has this whole other dark side, you know, he won't see it for a little while. And yeah, and is a man that just doesn't like to be crossed. To add what he thinks is a final insult to Jack, he says, my advice, you want some say in how others speak of you, write a book. You know, just a little hint from him, you can make your own narrative in your own book. He asks him, what does he want to do? And Jack asks for a pen. So yeah, very quick scene where Woods-Rogers fills Eleanor in on what's just gone on. Jack's written to Anne to seemingly hand over the gold. He's told Woods-Rogers she may be weary, so to only send one messenger. Captain Hersey is the unlucky bastard given this task, and Max enters at this point asking about Jack's arrest. There's a little look between Eleanor and Woods-Rogers, perhaps a can we trust her kind of look. So Max has obviously been trusted and is allowed to speak to Jack alone. Just another fantastic scene. The cuts between this scene and Anne, you know, are really great. 20 bloody seconds of Anne this episode, so, you know, not much, but even just a little Anne is better than no Anne. So yeah, Max, I give her some credit here. I think she goes to see him knowing his pride has been wounded maybe, and how hard, had this been true, it would be for him. Maybe to feel the situation out a bit as well, as she sort of ends up doing. Though she does seem generally shocked when he does reveal the truth of it. So yeah, Jack ponders, you know, he would have saved Nassau and the story will be told long after he's gone. And Max says she know it will and, you know, she'll make sure of it. And Jack just says, sounds like a lifeless story to me. A little nervously, Max asks what he means. And Jack goes over again how stunned he is, you know, how quickly Woods-Rogers took order. But says, truth is, there's been no conquest, only the appearance of one. Without the cash, Woods-Rogers doesn't have a conquest, you know. And yeah, great music once more and, you know, reaction shots from Max. She asks him worriedly, what did he do? He says he sent word to Anne to take the cash and disappear. And Max remarks, Woods-Rogers saw the letter. Max is smarter than this, I think, you know, especially when it comes to knowing, you know, Jack and Anne. Yeah, bit of an audience spoon feed, but as a Jack and Anne fan, you know, it still gives me goosebumps every time when Jack says, you don't think I can convey a thought to Anne, comprehensible only to her, a thought as simple as run. You know, and we see Anne reading the letter, understanding it, and yeah, and I hope the afterlife treats you well, Mr. Hersey. A tough mental moment possibly for Anne as well there, you know, her first kill in cold blood since Logan and Charlotte, you know, a kill given by just a bit of worded code from Jack. Not something I really thought about before. So, I have begun the duel, Jack says. Yeah, he's not hype about it, you know, it's a stubborn play for him. He will deny him the cash, whatever bribes or pain he inflicts, he says. I will deny him the cash, so I will deny him the victory. So, whatever Nassau is by Christmas, English will not be it. Yeah, he could have left it alone, but again, this is Jack Rackham, and though his plays are different to Vane and Flint's, and yeah, let's not forget with Jack, you know, he's doing this with no idea that he'll have it full backup, you know, with Vane and Flint, who he thinks are long gone. As far as he knows, it's just him and Anne, who he will also know he's putting in great danger when she just wanted to get shot of Nassau, you know, last episode. So, not just a duel with Woods-Rogers, but with himself as well in making this decision. Although it leads to a lot of stress and tension, it's just brilliant Jack Rackham stuff, and just a great defiant play, and an MVP nomination for John Rackham, for Jack Rackham. Rather uselessly, Max says, do not do this. Max, you know, it's already done. It's already done, girl. And yeah, we see Hersey's dead body about this point, you know, return on a horse. And Jack concludes it's going to be one of two outcomes. Woods-Rogers sees that defeat is inevitable and leaves and he'll get Nassau back. or he'll stubbornly refuse and Spain will raise Nassau to the ground. Yep, and that would be the one. We focus in, on Max as he's saying this. I do feel for her here, I sort of spoke about it last episode and I understand her motives going forward, I do. And I think she really has put some faith in what Woods-Rogers and Eleanor are doing and trying to build, and she's just put her lot in with it. So yeah, here comes her old partner, causing absolute chaos and waging a war. Add the Anne factor as well and the conflict there. This has put a spanner in Max's plans as well. And yeah, I feel it for her. Not Woods-Rogers though. Ha 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 ha, in his case. So yeah, speaking of, one final scene with him. Obviously, yeah, at this point he's learned of Jack and Anne, that they're not playing ball. He's fuming, but he's still got a great game face. Eleanor and Max are also present. He says, he makes it clear he's prepared to do anything. He says Anne Bonny must be found, the cash found. It's all that matters. He knows the goodwill he's had so far with the men on the island is in danger the longer this drags out. Because if he finds the money only to lose the street, he doesn't get to finish, as Max reassures him, if you have me, then you have the street. That's another great Max line. She confesses Jack and Anne were her partners, friends, more. But now they have made themselves something else to me. I have sacrificed too much to build something here. I will not let them take it away. Max, I love you. Deep down, yeah, again, I understand you and your motives here, but we're going to need to take a break now for 4 or so episodes, girl. I will be back to fly your beautiful flag as soon as possible, but for now, always going to be a tough couple of episodes, 2 or 3 episodes now. Okay, yeah, I think that's everything with those guys. I think that's all kind of the discussion with them. So yeah, let's finish on Okanoko Island. It's pronounced like 2 different ways, so I'm not 100% sure how to say it. Okakoko, I'm gonna go with. If it's wrong, it's wrong. So yeah, let's finish there with Flint, Billy, Vane and Teach. So yeah, Flint, Billy and the remaining Walrus crew are making their way to Teach's Island. They have some Maroons now on board, and yeah, this will be picked up more on a later episode, but we see there's already some tensions, some culture differences. Not everybody on the Walrus crew is so forward thinking. I have to catch his name, but yeah, this guy is going to play a part in the last few episodes of the season, and he's going to be a bit of a problem, in trying to bridge this gap between the Maroons and the Walrus crew. Yeah, Flint puts his foot down, explains to the crew in question it's taken everything to get here, and he can't see this new compact fall apart before it's even begun. But yeah, once alone, Billy observes he doesn't expect that will be the last spat, and Flint agrees. A braver Billy again this episode, out of immediate peril now, and he's back fully on Flint's arse. He's not lost all reason with it yet, like he will next season, but we'll really see this episode. The Flint show, Billy's completely over it now. He can't believe he's talked everyone around again, that the plan's changed again, that Flint's got people going along with his plans again, but Flint says calmly, but not you. Everyone's wrong but you. So yeah, definitely tension building there again between the pair. But it's cut short as they approach the island. Flint explains to him that the fate of this war depends on this meeting, where he's going to ask Teach for something he can't possibly give. Success or failure of this war depends on the outcome. And Billy could come out looking very smart if Teach doesn't want to play ball, which he nearly does. Billy, yeah, he's an interesting character who's been sidelined mostly so far this season, both in the show and with my discussions really. Although there's definitely resentment building, a sort of he can't keep getting away with it type attitude. Ultimately with Billy there is always kind of a logic to his hatred, at least we're going to get further away from that, but still at this point, I have sort of gone over this briefly before. With Flint as a leader, it just hasn't stopped for any of them. The fight, the chase, the unpredictability, the loss. This season alone, it's just been one thing after the other. And I think end of the day, pretty much up until now, Billy has been a very relatable character. As much as we love watching Flint and seeing him boss, a situation, imagine being on the crew under his command. We, as an audience, know everything. Billy doesn't. Imagine the ups and downs from one day to the next. But at the same time, and what Billy's starting to forget or lose sight of, I think, is Flint does have a passionate cause, a mission. It's had to change course a couple of times recently. But in the long run, it would benefit anyone on the account. A life, Billy does love ultimately, I think. And for better or worse, Flint does get the results. He scrapes them out of those situations that others might not. And we really start to see this episode. Billy's just getting a little bit sick of it all. I think that loyal follower we've seen so far is maybe slowly imagining himself as a strong leader who'd do things very differently. And he's starting to get a bit salty at Flint's 9 lives and the hold and respect, he still has with men, with the crew, after everything. And that's all sort of confirmed in a brief interaction, while the two captains are getting ready for their duel. He's chatting with Ben Gunn and, he's observing honestly, a few days ago he could make sense of it all. But today he doesn't know what outcome he wants. But he knows it's Flint's time. He knows he's due. And he just wants a front row seat when it happens to make sure it's real. So when Vane ends up intervening, instead of relief for his captain, it's a kind of, he's done it again, sort of reaction from Billy. So a very interesting Billy episode this. My boy is definitely drifting away a little bit, and I still love him, but he's gonna drift season 4. But I'll hang on to him, for as long as I can. But some good discussion with Billy coming up when he has the chance to lead, a little bit later in the season. But let's jump back to that great scene when Flint met Teach. So as they land, we see the island, it's full of life, much like early season 1 Ranger Camp really, but Vane is on his own, pensive, looking out to sea. We saw it last episode and confirmed this episode. This isn't what Vane wants. He has unfinished business in Nassau. We want him to live happily ever after with Teach, obviously with our hindsight, but it was just never to be. We see Teach in bed with a woman, one of his first wives, or just a long-term girlfriend maybe. Wasn't completely sure. But a lot of love in history there, it's clear to see. She knows about Charles, the first time it all went down, and remarks how Teach vowed not to make the same mistake again. But, here he is with Vane once more. And this is where we learn, Teach, he isn't in great health. A bit of shrapnel is slowly making its way to his heart. A grim little timepiece, he remarks. Making his actions with Vane and his lack of care in taking back Nassau much more understandable now. As he says, it doesn't have to last long. He wants to live out his final years, however long he's got left, with some good, uncomplicated piracy with Vane by his side. With Eleanor gone, he took his first opportunity to rekindle their bond and partnership. But as he's seen, and sadly gets final confirmation soon, this version of Vane has moved on. It's not the person he knew. He has a cause he's passionate about, and he has alliances of his own. And perhaps a little selfish on Teach's part, not giving Vane the full story in his choice, to leave what he was doing and join him. But maybe he wouldn't want Vane to join him out of pity, so maybe that's why as well he kept it to himself. So anyway, when Teach met Flint, as I said last episode, there's a reason we only get one scene like this with these two characters. They're just too similar. They're too smart, articulate, strong captains who will just never back down once their mind is set on something. Just too many scenes of these together, and they just lose, they'd lose that monumental impact, I think. Teach lets out a quiet little Jesus, as he spots Flint approaching, and Vane is also shocked to see him alive. And, he's quietly just taking it all in. And back to that title of duel, one we can see raging in Vane's mind at the moment. Teach almost echoes Billy's sentiments when he says to Flint, after remarking all that he's survived so far, either you're unkillable, friend, or way overdue. And I love how Flint, he looks back to Billy at that. So they get to talking. Of course, Teach wants nothing, of this war on Nassau. He's just got no interest in it. Again, that makes even more sense now. We know he sees it as a lost cause, and he's clearly not prepared to put whatever time he has left into it. Flint lays out the plan and says to carry it out, he wants the men back, the ship's back, and he wants Vane back. And Teach calls out Flint a bit, says he's past his time and he's been here, years before with the same promises that were never met. I bet Teach and Billy would have probably got on great if this had gone down another way, if we had maybe a longer show and another season, we could have had a little arc. with these two joining forces. That would have been interesting. But yeah, but they discuss loyalty, Nassau and oaths, and it starts to get intense real quick. You know, what started as polite, respectable, civil chat becomes cold and to the point. The dance has stopped. Two captains, you know, who know each other's reputations, had each other made, and knew from the go where this was ultimately leading, I think. At least playing it out by the book to start, you know, as they would. Teach is old school, and yeah, not going to let him just take everything back, including Vane. Yeah, much like already discussed with Silver, you know, men like this just can't be seen to be weak in front of the crew who are in their charge. Respect and loyalty can be fickle, and consistency is key. Again, you know, can tie Billy into that. And Teach sort of comments about his fleet, and Flint angrily remarks, it's not his, it never was. Teach sort of counters, do you honestly believe I'm just going to step aside and let you make that play? And Flint just coldly replies, I honestly don't give a shit what you would or would not do. Teach's face in that moment, we know he doesn't like being disrespected. I mean, who does? But we learned that, though, from his intro in the show. And, you know, we know the fear his name and command holds. But Flint is just like, nah, I'm not about it. So, yeah, Flint makes his point to Vane now. Tells him it's his choice. Flint puts it directly to him. You know, he wants to resume their compact. And, yeah, Vane makes some good counterpoints about the lack of loyalty he was shown when the pardons were offered. How quickly men turned their backs. And Flint counters again, you know, he can turn that around. And had he been there, none of this would have happened. You know, this wouldn't be happening in the first place. But yeah, not yet decided. Vane replies with, Nassau is dead. It doesn't deserve anything from me or the men on this beach. We are finally free from it, and I see no reason to change that. So yeah, knowing where this was always heading, I think the two captains agree there's only one way to settle this. Pistols, then swords. The challenge is struck, you know, with Vane knowing that losing either of these great men in this way just would be such a waste. You know, we can really just see again his brain just ticking over. But yeah, again, just a fantastic scene with these two formidable characters meeting. It's not quite an MVP shout for Flint this episode. 3 stronger shouts for me this episode. But yeah, still a fantastic scene. So yeah, Vane gives him a little warning as he's preparing. You know, he can't win. He's heard about all they faced. You know, at his best, it's a dogfight, but diminished, you know, and he trails off. Flint counters that he's not doing so bad now, and Teach has been off the account for years. Might not have the strength that he thinks he does. Yeah, fantastic tense stuff and build-up, and Flint remakes his point, you know, that the men will go where they are led. Woods-Rogers may have got there first, but he's basically saying, I can get them back. Vane, yeah, again, so conflicted, caught between two loyalties, what he owes to Teach. But yeah, Flint says he doesn't care about all that. This is much bigger than that. It's not about individuals anymore, you know, personal quarrels amongst themselves. They took my home. I can't walk away from that. Can you? And yeah, Flint really hammering into Vane what he's already been feeling the last couple of episodes. You know, he says, forget loyalty, oaths and debts. Forget all that. The only question that matters is this. Who are you? You know, that's really going to leave Vane with something to ponder. And yeah, so they duel. Shot so well, you know, great intense stuff. The men, you know, lined up on either side. Billy and Vane watching on. Flint knows he has to get him with the pistol shot. You know, it's his best chance. And while we see he does clip him, we also see a visible kind of, oh shit, look on Flint's face when Teach gets up. So yeah, they cross swords. I always love when Teach takes his sword out the sand and it kind of cascades all around him. One of those, you know, likely unintentional moments that just really adds to a scene. We can see here that Teach is clearly the better swordsman. You don't get a reputation like his for nothing. Flint is being overpowered, you know, he catches a nasty slice and he's on the ground. It looks like it's over, but Flint will never say yield, just like Teach wouldn't. He'd die there and then if needs be. And yeah, we see Vane's mind working and probably knowing this. And just as it looks like Teach is about to strike the final blow, Charles makes a public show of defiance against his captain and mentor again. You know, stunned, Teach can only really kind of parry backwards a bit until they just stop for a breath, to which Vane drops his sword in a powerful statement of enough. You know, do what you have to do now. And yeah, and just with such a sadness and finality to it, Teach just tells Flint to take him and get the fuck off his beach. You know, as I said last episode, I think deep down, Teach knows Vane wasn't into it, wasn't really in. And he's been trying to convince himself otherwise. And yeah, on seeing Flint's return, knew the temptation would be there, so he likely wanted to get rid of that temptation in front of Vane. But yeah, Nassau, it's too important to Vane. It's been his life for years now. He's invested in Flint's cause and compact, end of last season saw to that. The betrayal on Teach's face, though, it always gets to me, when Vane first jumps in. Yeah, and also it can't be underestimated how tough morally that would be for Vane, as he'll sort of discuss with Flint briefly in the next scene. Knows what he did to him for Eleanor years ago, and going against him here again publicly. But yeah, again, it's a cause he believes in now, an alliance, because yeah, with the discussion already had about how strong-willed, loyal to their beliefs Flint and Teach are, Vane absolutely has to go in that same category. He just had the misfortune once again of being sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's been a tough couple of episodes for him, and hindsight, again, we really want him to stay and just be safe forever, and live happily ever after. But for coming to Flint's aid and resuming his compact, despite breaking Teach's heart a little bit, Vane is going to pick up an MVP nomination. So yeah, as just mentioned, there is a little scene with Vane and Flint on board the ship near the end of the episode. Vane, understandably, feeling bad, know he had an impossible decision, but also regretful, that he had to turn on Teach twice now. Wants reassurances he didn't do it for nothing, and Flint says he won't lie to him, it would have helped having the fleet. So yeah, unfortunately they couldn't get the ships and the men back, a compromise I guess Vane made with Teach. Least he owed him, I suppose. Or maybe the men didn't rate the betrayal, so they didn't want to come, whatever reason. But Flint says they have resources, they have allies, all that matters is what they do with them. And Vane reveals he might be able to help, and we sort of go back, to what happened last episode and the Spanish intelligence they found. Vane did take an interest in it. It mentioned the separate money from the Urca gold, money he knows Jack and Anne have. With the question left to hang, while we get a shot of the men, looking for Anne in the dark as she sort of stays low out of sight. Can they get to the gold before Woods-Rogers does? While I really do enjoy Season 1 and most of Season 2's feud in Flint and Vane, they are such a, great force when they are of the same mind and they're on the same team. Now they understand each other, so well. Great teasing end to a great episode that just makes you want to jump straight into the next one. But yeah, so much discussion again, but I think that's pretty much everything gone over. So yeah, let's get that MVP sorted.
Last item.
So yeah, another episode where my three nominees, Madi, Jack and Vane are just neck and neck, a really tough call. I think Madi has a stronger shout to get her off the mark soon, in an episode where the other contenders are all sort of going to cancel each other out a bit, so she stands a good chance there. But yeah, she definitely deserved a nomination this episode. And Vane's moment is small but a brave moral decision, but let's face it, Vane's got 9 in the bag. I'm gonna spoiler alert. So yeah, I'm leaning towards Jack this episode, just that little bit more. I think it's a very strong episode for him. Funny, stubborn, only as Jack can wade between the two so easily. As far as he knows, it's a losing battle really, but he's not going to roll over and give the victory to Woods-Rogers. And with Anne's help, speaking in codes only they understand, he's going to make it his mission to see Woods-Rogers fail, or at least give him an absolute arseache with that failing. So yeah, I'm going to give Jack this episode's MVP award, taking him up to 3 now, putting him joint second with Vane for the time being. So yeah, another phenomenal episode, guys. Yeah, it was, I wanted to get this one out a little bit quicker, but it's been such a mental couple of weeks. You might see my t-shirt. I went to my first pirate festival, which was awesome, and I was so blessed, so fortunate to meet my internet friend, my black sales friend, who also tunes in and watches this show. Thank you. Obviously I won't name because I don't know what you want to be known on online and stuff like that. But yeah, it was lovely to meet you. That was amazing. And I just, for the first time, was able to just black sales to another human person in person, which was great. I think we could have probably waffled away for another hour or so without realising it. But we're like, we better go, haven't we? We're just going to natter the day away. But yeah, that was great. That was great as well. And yeah, it was just a lovely day out. So yeah, I highly recommend a pirate festival to anyone watching that may have not done that before. If you're into all that, that was good fun. But yeah, otherwise I will be back very soon. Yeah, I mean, it won't be Sunday because that'll be too soon with this one airing a bit later. But, you know, I'll be back in a week or so with episode 7. So yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Take care. I will see you very soon. Catch you on the flip side. Peace out. Bye.